Thank you very much. So the slides are a little bit skewed here. As you can see, the Earth isn't perfectly round there, but I think it's going to be okay. I think the message will still come across, but I apologize for whatever's going on there. So this is the first picture of the Earth fully illuminated that we ever saw. It was taken from space 45 years ago by the last Apollo mission. And one interesting thing about this is you can really see the southern polar ice cap here. Today, there's much less ice than what you see in this picture. But another interesting thing about this picture is it really serves to unify us and kind of bring home the point that what we do affects the entire world, and it affects all living things on the Earth. This is a picture of the atmosphere, also taken from space. When you're on the ground and you're looking up at the sky, it looks vast, very, very large, and almost limitless. But in actuality, it's a very, very thin band that encircles the world. And Carl Sagan said that if there was a globe in a schoolroom that had a coat of varnish on it, our atmosphere is as thick as that coat of varnish relative to the globe. So it's like the skin of an apple. It's a very fragile thing. It's very, frankly, small. And we act as if we can dump as much pollution as we want into the atmosphere, and it will dissipate, and there won't be any consequences to that. And we are currently dumping 110 million tons of pollution into the atmosphere every single day. That pollution builds up, and the Earth heats up. So I'm going to go through a little bit of science here, because not everybody might understand climate change, and I think this is interesting and important. These slides I got from Al Gore, from his Climate Reality Project, and I'm using them with permission. So this is science that has been understood since the 1800s. The Earth receives energy from the sun in the form of light. That energy is absorbed by the Earth, and it warms it. Some of the energy is reflected back to space from clouds, ice, and other reflective surfaces. This is normal. You can't really see. There's supposed to be red squiggly lines going up. You can't see the lines. Okay. But some of this outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by the Earth's atmosphere, and it actually bounces back. So Martin has a pointer here. Yeah. So some of the radiation escapes out like this, but the natural greenhouse gas layer reflects some of it back. So it comes up, it reflects up, and then it bounces back. And when this happens, the Earth warms further. So the problem is that the carbon dioxide and the methane and the other greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere is causing the atmosphere to thicken. So this natural greenhouse gas layer is getting thicker. And what that does is it reflects back even more of that reflected light. So even more of what would normally escape doesn't escape. And this process warms the Earth. So the natural greenhouse gas layer that I just talked about is actually a really good thing. We want it here because it's what keeps the Earth warm at night so that we can live. It allows us and everything else on the planet to live because we have this atmosphere. Venus, which is closer to the sun, has a much thicker atmosphere. And this is because of a runaway greenhouse effect that happened on Venus about 500 million years ago. Venus has a temperature. Oh, you can't see this. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Venus, the average temperature on Venus is 450 degrees Celsius. The average temperature on the Earth is 15 degrees Celsius. Mercury, which is right here, which is much, much closer to the sun, has very little atmosphere. And so the average temperature on Mercury is 167 degrees Celsius. So 167, 450, and 15. So even though Mercury is much closer, it's much cooler than Venus because of this. This is what we're trying to avoid happening on Earth. Because if that happens on Earth, there's no life on Earth. So the question comes up often, at least in the United States often, whether or not man-made climate change is a real thing. It is a real thing. And 99.99% of climate scientists agree that man-made climate change is real, that the climate change that we're experiencing is caused by human activity. To put that a little bit more in perspective for you, a higher percentage of scientists agree that man-made climate change is real, and not fake news for anybody that knows Donald Trump, then agree that tobacco causes cancer. So what I'm seeing here is anything I put in red, you can't see. So a higher percentage of scientists agree that man-made climate change is real, then agree that tobacco causes cancer. It's a certain thing. A little bit more. So for the past 400,000 years, carbon levels in the atmosphere never got above this line here. This goes back 400,000 years. After World War II, around 1950, it breached this line. And this is where we are now, and we continue to go up. This is an interesting graph. Okay, this is in red. So this shows average summer temperatures. The baseline was set between 1951 and 1980. The blue shows days where the temperature was cooler than normal, white is normal, red is warmer than normal. So that's the baseline. That's 1951 to 1980. And this green line here is going to hold our baseline for us. So this is 1981 to 1991. So in the 80s, everything shifted to the warmer. In the 90s, it shifted more. And in the 2000s, we're here. So until 2011, now we have almost no cooler than normal days. Red is almost the entire graph. And again, what you can't see is over here, there's extreme red. And these are extremely high temperatures. This used to cover 0.1% of this graph, and now it covers a full 10% of the graph. And this happened between 1980 and 2011. Very, very fast. Red again. I shouldn't have used red. So 16 of the 17 hottest years ever recorded happened since 2000. The other one was 1998. The hottest year ever measured was last year. It's the hottest year on record. This is going to blow your mind. We are trapping in our atmosphere as much heat energy as would be released by detonating 400,000 in red, in invisible ink, in 400,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs every single day. That's how much energy we're trapping in our atmosphere. 400,000 Hiroshima bombs a day. So in 2015, more than 2,000 people died in the heat wave in India, where temperatures averaged 50 degrees Celsius every day. And of course, this impacted other individuals that were not human. And it happened all over the world. Wildfires. So climate change also increases the incident of wildfires, so we have more of them. And when we have them, they're much worse. I actually live in Seattle, Washington, which is in the northwest corner of the United States. Seattle is known for rain, right? If you know anything about Seattle, they say it rains all the time. It doesn't rain all the time, but we get a lot of rain. This summer, we had 55 days in a row with not a single drop of rain. Something else is we have wildfires now. This is a wildfire that's burning in Seattle right now. This picture was taken on Monday. And this is a highway. So there's cars here. I'm not sure if you can see them from where you're sitting. But this is a highway, and these are very tall evergreen trees that line the highway. And this is all smoke from a wildfire. When I left my house on Tuesday morning to come here, ash was falling like snow out of the sky on my house. That never happens in Seattle. This shows some of that ash captured in a spider web at my house. So in addition to wildfires, this heat also causes drought all over the world. So this is a man in Syria. Between 2006 and 2010, drought turned 60% of Syria's fertile land into desert. This man had 400 acres of wheat. Now it's all desert and completely infertile. In addition to that, it caused death. 80% of the cows in Syria died during this time because of drought. Thankfully, the Pentagon does believe in man-made climate change. I have more stuff in red here. I apologize for that. The Pentagon and the U.S. military does believe in climate change. They see it as a very real threat to national security because of global instability, hunger, poverty, refugees, and ultimately conflict, wars. So they take it seriously, even if our current president doesn't. These are a couple of Donald Trump's tweets about climate change. He said that it was created by and for the Chinese, that it's a scam, and the Chinese created it to make our manufacturing non-competitive. And here he flat out calls it bullshit. So I hope he doesn't stay in power very long. Another interesting thing about Donald Trump is he owns a golf course in Scotland, and that golf course is being threatened by climate change, so he's building a wall. He's building the Mexicans aren't paying for it, but he's building a wall to hold the tide back to protect his golf course. So I guess the only hope that we have is that it will threaten his investments and his wallet enough to where he'll change his tune on this. More in red. So this graph shows that the oceans are heating up dramatically. So basically it shows, no, I didn't mean to do that. Basically it shows from 1950 to 1960, it kind of goes along like this, and then right around 2000, so it kind of, ocean heat kind of goes around like this, and then at 2000, it starts going like this. The oceans are heating up very dramatically, just like that carbon graph that I showed you a minute ago about after World War II. And when ocean temperatures rise, we get more intense hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones. We don't necessarily get more of them, but when we get them, they tend to be much worse. This picture right here shows 3 Category 4 hurricanes simultaneously around Hawaii, and this happened in 2015. Last week, Hurricane Harvey slammed into Texas in the United States and caused a lot of devastation. And today, my father, who lives in Florida, is in the path of Hurricane Irma, which is a Category 5 storm. So I got some personal experience with this stuff. It's very, very bad. This is the aftermath of a hurricane that hit the Philippines in 2013. There's a person standing right here, And this storm created 4 million refugees. 4 million people had to be relocated from the Philippines because of this. Where are we going to put 4 million people? That's one hurricane. So here's the linkage between climate change and the extreme weather events. As temperatures increase, the oceans evaporate more moisture, right? Water starts evaporating, tends to boil when the temperature goes up. So the water is evaporating from the oceans and going into the sky. Warmer air can hold more water than cold air. For every 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature in the atmosphere, it's able to hold 7% more water vapor, more red text. Sorry. There's already 4% more vapor over the oceans than there was 30 years ago. That's a lot. If you consider 4% of the water that's on the planet, that's a lot of water. There's 4% more water in the atmosphere now than there was 30 years ago. What happens is the downpours get bigger. So here's some pictures I'm going to go through pretty quickly that'll illustrate, hopefully, to you the severity of this. So this is all flooding. This is not caused by hurricanes. This is caused by flooding, by a lot of downpour very quickly. So this is Houston, Texas in 2015. This is France, 2014. This happened in 3 hours. It's 3 hours of rainfall that did that. Indonesia, 2015. They got 31 centimeters of rain in 24 hours. India, 2013. Pakistan, 2010. England, 2014. Germany in 2013. The Czech Republic, also in 2013. Greece, also in 2013. Spain, 2015. And finally, Argentina, also in 2015. So my point here is it's happening all over the world. It's affecting the entire world. So one point about ice melt. We all hear that glaciers are melting, ice caps are melting. This is a picture of a glacier in Alaska. This photograph was taken in 1880. The next photograph was taken in 2005. The glacier's a lake. So worldwide extreme weather catastrophes are dramatically on the rise. There are red bars that extend up on top of these blue ones that are the worst. But even with just seeing this, you can tell these are extreme weather catastrophes. In 2016, the losses related to these catastrophes were $175 billion US dollars. Now, some people wonder, how can climate change cause both severe storms, like hurricanes and severe precipitation and severe flooding, and also cause drought and wildfires? That doesn't seem to make sense. The reason that happens is because the earth is heating up and water is evaporating from both the oceans and the land. So it evaporates from the oceans. It also is pulled out of the land, which causes the droughts. And as the land gets more dry, fires are more apt to happen. So I just wanted to clear that up because that's often a question. Now this, I hope you can see this. These are people walking in a crosswalk, and you can see this is water. So this is a street, and the water's coming up over their feet. This is Miami Beach, Florida, at high tide. So this is not caused by rainfall, it's not caused by a hurricane, it's high tide. This is very, very bad. What this means, the implication of this, is we may see the ocean reclaim Miami in our lifetime. It could be completely underwater. Another issue with the oceans is by the year 2100, the surface waters will be 150% more acidic, reaching levels not seen in 20 million years. With acidic water like this, what's going to happen is the coral reefs are going to die. Shellfish are already having a big, big problem. And the oyster farms, which obviously I'm not a fan of them, but in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle area where I live, there are oyster farms. People just, will farm oysters to sell them. It's not working. It's gone because that's something that's done in shallow waters. The oysters aren't growing. So we're already seeing this happen. So in addition to the problems with agricultural runoff and fishing, we've also got this going on. The oceans are in incredibly bad shape. So let's talk about food. Okay, so this is your food's carbon footprint's really not our food. But the footprint of, the carbon footprint of food, cows and sheep have the largest carbon footprint. All animal products have a much larger carbon footprint than vegan food. One interesting thing here is grazing cows have the highest of all. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, we need to end factory farming, we need to end feedlots, but what we need to do is we need to revert back to cows in the pasture. No. For many reasons, that's no. But from a climate perspective, that's a definite no. That has the highest carbon footprint of all. The Worldwatch Institute in Washington, D.C. So this statistic right here was quoted in Cowspiracy, and it has its critics. Not everybody agrees with how they derive this number. But the Worldwatch Institute in Washington, D.C., which is a think tank, says that greenhouse gases, that animal agriculture accounts for 51% of all greenhouse gases. It does definitely contribute the most methane. The carbon dioxide is the largest greenhouse gas, and it's the most dangerous greenhouse gas long term. But methane is actually 86 times more potent than carbon, but it only stays in the atmosphere for 8 years. So it's 86 times more potent, but it has a very short lifespan. Carbon stays in the atmosphere for 100 years. So if we stop putting methane in the atmosphere, which is 86 times more toxic to the atmosphere, we can dramatically cool the Earth faster because the methane that's there is only going to stay there for 8 years. The Amazon rainforest. So I'm sure you've heard that a lot of the Amazon rainforest is being destroyed to make way for cows, animal agriculture. So again, this is that very high red bar that we saw on the previous slide, this grazing cows. So this is the worst thing for our climate that could possibly be. And on top of it, we're destroying the Amazon rainforest, and trees eat carbon, right? They breathe in carbon, they exhale oxygen. So this is like, absolutely, this is like doomsday device kind of stuff here. So my point with this is when people give you the humane argument, right? So if you're trying to talk to people and they say, oh, I only eat humane meat, or, oh, yeah, factory farming is really horrible for the environment, I know that, but that, I only buy the grass-fed, nicely treated. Yeah, well, ethical reasons aside, because we can argue that all day long, but some people are just not going to listen to the ethical reasons. So if they care about the environment, if they care about the future for their grandchildren, then they seriously need to understand this fact that this picture that everybody thinks is the ideal is going to destroy the planet. We add 1 billion people to the earth every 15 years. 1 billion people every 15 years. So do you think this is sustainable? Do you think we can do this and have everybody eat cows? No, we can't. And this is just an accelerator. This is accelerating us towards what we saw around Venus earlier. This is Dr. James Hansen. He worked for NASA. He's the leading climate scientist that worked for NASA for a very long time. He is the one who led this research and understood why this happened to Venus and that it was a result of the oceans boiling away on Venus. He quit NASA so that he could become a climate activist against the government that was his employer before. And Al Gore listens to this man very, very much. This is a quote by Al Gore. So let's see what Dr. Hansen had to say about impact of an individual on climate change.
Probably the single action that a person can take, an individual can take to reduce carbon emissions is vegetarianism.
I would say veganism, but that's very good that he said that.
Probably the...
We already did that. Okay, another thing is it's actually getting mainstream media attention. The New York Times got this question about the impact of eating meat, and if large numbers of people reduced beef consumption, would it make a difference? And the answer from the New York Times is yes. Beef is the most environmentally damaging form of meat, and that meat production is especially harmful. So this is good news. China. Okay, so we often worry about the 1.3 billion people in China and their impact on the climate. But we also need to be worried about the fact that China has an emerging middle class. And that emerging middle class wants to eat like an American, as they say, which means they want to eat a very high amount of animal products. Well, the Chinese don't have the animal agriculture lobbying groups that we have to deal with in the United States. And so very fortunately, the Chinese Nutrition Society came out with this, and they are suggesting that people reduce their consumption of all meat by 50%. And they listed 3 reasons. They said we need to do this to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also because it'll lessen our problems with obesity and diabetes. So that's encouraging that they're seeing the correlation here. So Wild Aid took this opportunity, and they reached out to James Cameron, the director of Avatar, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they created this public service announcement to run in China. It was originally done in Chinese, I'm not sure which language, but now it's available in English, and I think other languages too.
To avoid catastrophic climate change, we need to change how we travel, improve how we generate energy, and consider what we eat. Meat production produces up to 15% of greenhouse gases, and high meat consumption can lead to heart disease, obesity, and other serious health issues. So for the planet and for your health, please consider eating less.
Less meat, less heat, more life.
Okay. This one's a little bit longer, but I think you'll enjoy it. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't agree with everything that is said in this next clip. I don't think you will either, but I still wanted to show it to you. Leonardo DiCaprio, who is basically responsible for getting Cowspiracy on Netflix, more recently hosted this National Geographic documentary, and this is an excerpt from it. It's called Before the Flood. Okay, more red font here. Enough solar energy reaches the Earth every hour to power the needs of the entire world for a full year. That's the power of solar. The same can basically be said for wind in the fact that we could provide all the electricity for the entire world 40 times over with wind. So, should we switch from fossil fuels to solar and wind energy? Yes, we should do that. Is it enough? No, it's absolutely not enough. Is it enough, as we just saw, to cut back on your meat or to switch from cows to chickens, from eating cows to eating chickens? Well, more red font. But what this says is the least animal-consuming country in the world is Malaysia. If we all ate as little meat, dairy, and eggs as Malaysia does, food production would still need the resources of 2.5 Earths by the year 2050. So no, cutting back is not good enough. This threshold is approaching us very, very rapidly. We must adopt a vegan diet. More red font. So what can you do? You can use your voice. You can speak up. You can educate people at every opportunity you possibly have. You can create opportunities to educate people. And you have to meet them where they are. So for me, it was the ethical argument. I went vegan in 2010 overnight because I saw Earthlings. That was it. That's all I needed to know. That doesn't do it for everybody. I can't imagine it. When I went vegan, I was telling everybody, and I thought, if they just know. No, not everybody did. Some people will do it for their health, and some people will do it for the environment. So you have to find out where the person is, what's going to make the connection for them. You can use your vote. So pay attention to who's running for office, find out what their policies are, what their stance is. They might change it once they get in office, so you have to watch that and you have to hold them accountable. But at least we have to care. We have to care, we have to vote, and we have to hold these people accountable because they have the power to make the laws. And use your choices, which I'm sure everyone in this room is using their choices. Make good choices. Yeah. So the plan, no red font. So this is the plan. I am an organizer for the SAVE movement, but part of the SAVE movement is an organization called Climate Vegan. And Climate Vegan is about exactly what it sounds like and pretty much what I'm doing up here right now. So we educate people about like what climate change is. I know I took you guys through that. Some of you may have already known. But you can't assume that people understand. And sometimes when you spell it out for them, something clicks that didn't before, and it makes all the difference. So, talk to me about Climate Vegan, join another group, that's fine. But grassroots organizing, that's what the SAVE movement does. We're all about grassroots organizing, awareness campaigns. So you can do things like screen films. You can have a cowspiracy screening. There are a lot of different films out there that you can have screenings for. There's funding for this. So if you want to do something like that and you're needing some funds, talk to me. So let's see, I'm getting really close to the end of my time. So awareness campaigns. You need to educate vegans on climate change. See, vegans, I think, we don't have a lot of time. So we have our argument, we have our reasons. For me, I'm an ethical vegan. But what I understand is we're running out of time here. The animals don't have time, and the animals don't care why we're not killing them and eating them. They just don't want us to kill them. So if you do it because you don't want cancer, great. Don't kill me and eat me for that. If you're doing it because you want your great-grandkids to live in a nice world, that's fine too. So, I think it's important for vegans to be educated on all of the topics, and environment and climate change is one of them. So educate vegans, educate environmentalists about animal agriculture so that they understand it, because there's a lot of people who care about the environment, who are educated on the environment, but somehow they miss the correlation of how it's important to be vegan for the environment. So educate them on that. And then everybody else, if they're not a vegan or an environmentalist, just educate them on everything. But you need to try to educate people. Media attention. This is something that we do in the SAVE movement. We get media attention whenever we can. This week, one of the climate vegan organizers wrote a letter to the New York Times about this, and we've been successful with that. Petition lawmakers, as I was saying, so make your voice heard. One good thing here about being organized, there's power in numbers. You can get the ear of more people if there's more of you talking. But even if you're just a single person and you have no group, still speak up, still petition lawmakers. We need to eliminate the subsidies, right? So this is something that we work to do in Climate Vegan, is we want to eliminate the subsidies to the animal agriculture groups, and rather than that, we want to get aid for farmers who are currently in animal agriculture to transition to plants. So Al Gore says, speak the truth like your world depends on it, because your world depends on it. It really does. So again, I'm here all weekend. I'm at the SAVE movement table right out here. Please come by and talk to me. You can also send an email to climateveganinfo@gmail.com if you want more information. And I thank you very much.
So we have a few minutes more before the welcome reception. Anyone have questions, thoughts on this?
Go easy on me. Go easy on me.
Anyone? Yeah, there we have one.
Yeah, I heard in Belgium that we eat less meat, but our meat production, in fact, pigs, is increasing the export to China because they want our meat. Mm-hmm. So if the Chinese government is like trying to reduce the meat production, if I can imagine if it's in Belgium that they export a lot of pig's meat, that there are also other countries that will do that?
Yeah, so that's really good news globally, and that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's right. In many places in the world, the animals are exported, and China is a big one for those very reasons. And so, yeah, it's absolutely enormous. Even though it's not ultimately the solution to reduce meat consumption, that's not the answer, and it's not going to get us where we need to be. I mean, you know, and I'm an ethical vegan, so I never want any animal to be killed. But yes, I mean, this will actually save animals from being bred into this industry and be slaughtered, that China has come out with. We need to reduce by 50%, and it's probably going to affect the economies of some countries. So Belgium is probably going to feel that, you know. But I don't know what all of that means, but it's a supply and demand situation, right? So the demand goes down, the supply is going to have to go down, and I hope that Belgium and other countries find another way to make money. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. We're going to see, like this, we're going to see more slaughterhouses shut down. Maybe we'll have an animal rights conference in Belgium in a closed down pig slaughterhouse.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah.
So let's say for the moment that the whole world would become vegan. Would that be enough to stop the climate change?
It wouldn't be enough for everything, no. We have reached some tipping points. Miami's probably gone, for example. Even if somehow magically, I mean, did you guys hear about the tick that makes you allergic to red meat? This is an absolute true story. I went to Kansas City. I'm going to answer your question. But I went to Kansas City, and I was doing some undercover work around a slaughterhouse, and that tick bit me. I could not believe it. It was a Lone Star tick. So I'm allergic to red meat now. But, you know, you got to think, like, why is that happening? You know, why do we have this tick now? It's a really deep, interesting conversation to have. But, no, Miami is probably gone. So we have reached some tipping points, and we're going to have to deal with that. But if everyone went vegan overnight, it probably, or even, by 2050, it would allow us to still live on this planet. We would have to make adjustments, but we would not be facing complete and total annihilation. And if we don't go vegan pretty quickly, quite frankly, the science says that that's what's going to happen. We're going to be Venus. There won't be any life on Earth. It's that simple.
Anyone else? We have in the back here. Yes.
Hi, so thank you for this talk. My question will be about the emission of methanes, because basically, we know beef is a great emitter of methane, but some people were pointing rice, that rice agriculture was another big emitter of methane, so I wondered if you have any numbers of information about that.
That what is a big emitter of methane?
The rice.
Rice. No, I don't have any information about that. What I can tell you about that, the research that I did, I showed you that graph that showed that grass-fed beef was the highest, and the last two bars on the graph were alternative meat, so vegan fake meat, and beans, legumes, peas, things like that were the last two bars over here. So, there's pollution, and there are other greenhouse gases that are emitted by farming of vegetables. We're not going to completely eliminate those, especially with all the people that we have on this planet, but if we all ate rice, even if it is emitting methane into the world, it's far better than having all these cows here, billions and billions and billions of cows here. So I don't know about methane in rice, but I don't doubt that. I'm sure that's probably true, but it would be in the tiny bar, not in the great big giant bar. So better.
Was it you who raised your hand? Yes.
What do you respond to people who promote organic farming, especially organic animal husbandry, and they always talk about grazed beef as an important factor to sequester CO2 into the soil?
Grazed beef is the number one worst way to produce food on this planet. Grazing beef is absolutely number one the worst. So there is really no argument with that, and I can show you science, not in 30 seconds, but I can show you science on that. Organic farming, there are issues with organic farming, but again, it's like choosing your battles, picking your battles. I mean, when the house is on fire, it's like your first order of business is to put out the fire and not deal with, this knob on the door is a little wiggly. I might need to, tighten. No, you got to put out the fire. So, if we're organic farming vegetables and we're not raising animals to be used as food, huge win. Huge win. So I would rather the science says that it would be better for all animal agriculture to come to an end, and all of those current farms to switch over to organic vegetable farming, we would be able to live on this earth for many generations to come. If we don't do that, there won't be many generations to come.
I see someone there. Let's see. Yeah.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. My question is regarding the grazing cows as well. Compared to the factory farm cows, how come they don't produce methane? Because they get different food, or because they live shorter, or?
Well, it's interesting about they live shorter, but it's because of the food that they eat. The eating of the grass and the way that the process that goes on within the cow's body. The cows have 4 stomachs, and I'm not an expert on cow biology, but what I do know is when you feed a cow grass, much, much, much more methane is created than if you feed a cow grain. So, yeah, that's why.
I've seen an animation, a German animation about they try to catch the methane from the cows. Would that be somehow a technological solution?
I saw that.
Because you said that we're running out of time, so
yeah, no,
maybe we need additional solutions.
It kind of goes back. My answer would be no to that. It's not a solution because, you know, think about some of the things that we saw today and some of these statistics. I mean, even if we ate like the Malaysians, so the Malaysians they eat animal products, but they eat the least amount of any population on this planet. If every single one of us on the entire earth tomorrow ate like the Malaysians, by 2050 we would need 2.5 Earths to sustain that. And we only have one. So that's not sustainable. And I mean by 2050, that's within your lifetime. This is a very serious thing. So rather than trying to contain the methane of the cow and can we still have beef, that's really not the answer. We have to stop raising these cows and raising the animals for food. We have to stop doing it. We have to figure out a way to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Maybe a last one, if anyone has one. Here we have one, yes.
Thank you for your talk. Maybe I misunderstood, but you said that you are trying to fight against the subsidies.
Against the what?
Subsidies.
Yes. So do you not understand what that is, or are you asking why we're fighting it?
No, I understand what is it, but how do you fight?
How do you fight it?
Against that?
Well, we have to reach out to the lawmakers. And I mean, I'm American, obviously, and so I only understand the American political system, and that, you know, not so much. But, you know, I'm not a complete expert on politics. But what I know is, you know, the animal agriculture industries are heavily subsidized. I use this sometime back in the day, you know, back in my grandmother's day, you know, ham at Easter, maybe prime rib at Christmas. These kinds of things, these meats were associated with holidays because they were very expensive. And so families could only afford to have them on special occasions. Now you can get a ham sandwich any day of the week. Somebody making minimum wage can afford a ham sandwich. It's not a special thing anymore. The reason for that is because of, well, it's because of how we're raising the animals, right? The factory farming, the concentrated feedlots. And it's also because of government subsidies. So they're getting a lot of money subsidized from the government. So we need to stop that so that people won't be able to afford the meat anymore. I mean, this is a big fight. But what are we going to do? I mean, we're either going to just lay down and die, or we're going to fight. So we have to stop giving them subsidies. And rather than that, we have to educate the lawmakers. We have to find ways to reach them. We have to find the right person with the right message to get to them so that, you know, maybe they have grandchildren, and maybe rather than listening to this lobbyist, they can think about their grandchildren and make the right decision. We have to change the laws. That's what I was talking about with the subsidies. And take that money and give it to the farmers so that they can transition from raising animals to raising plants. Thank you.